Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel, Stitches with Love. My name is Elizabeth, and this is my little corner of the internet where I share all about my knitting adventures on and off the needles. And today I have nothing off the needles, but I do have some project updates. So if you're interested in what I'm sharing today, grab a cup of something cozy to sip on, a project if you have one, and I'm going to get started. All right, so I have a cup of something warm and cozy to sip on because my hands are really cold today. Today, the weather is not particularly cold, but it's kind of soggy. It's very springy, where it looks like it's going to pour buckets of rain one moment, and then the next it's kind of sunny. Right now, it's somewhere in between. We did have some rain this morning, and it looks like the wind is starting to pick up a little bit, and maybe we're in for kind of a stormy day. We'll see. All right, so the March socks. I've been working on these a little bit this morning. I got up really early, not because I really wanted to, but because I naturally tend to wake up early when my husband is waking up and going to work. And so I went ahead and got up and made some coffee and just kind of started on my day. Because going back to sleep just wasn't going to happen. And I wanted to try to have a little bit of quiet time before my boys woke up and needed to start their day to get ready for school. So I've been up for a while. I am hoping that I can make it through the rest of the day without too much more chaos. But I am about 3/4 of the way done with the March socks. This is the second one of the pair. Have I shown you the first one? I don't remember. I think I did. Pretty sure I did. Nearly done. And so the goal is to just keep plugging away today on the foot and hopefully getting to the toe, but we'll see. And then my coziest memory blanket. I have finished the I'm getting a call. I finished the March section. So this up is the March. Let's see, maybe if I do it this way, you can see it better. I don't know. I guess that sort of works. So these are the March colors of the March sock of the month. I don't know that I really love the combination of the main color and the coordinating in this middle square, but I don't dislike it either. I think it's fine. I think because there's so much of this color in this color here, it just kind of, I don't know, it looks like a completely different color. And it's just a bit much to me, but that's okay. I think it's going to look beautiful when everything is all put together. So far I have January, February, and March done. I have not yet started the April square, but I am making very good progress on the April sock of the month. So this one I started, I think, just last week. Was it last week? Maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't even remember. But anyway, it hasn't taken very long for me to get to this point. So this is over half done. This is the first of the April socks of the month. Very pleased with how they're doing, how they look. I'm done with the gusset, so now I'm solidly working on the foot. Again, my goal this week is to get this one done and then cast on for the second. I haven't really done a lot of work on the other sock. I'm really working exclusively on right now, so I'm not going to share that one. I also left it behind at work, so I can't actually physically show you anyway because I don't have it. All right. Yes, I think we're in for kind of a stormy spring day. Those are my favorite kind of days to stay home and hunker down and not go anywhere, not do anything, just bake something, have coffee or tea, and just have a quiet day at home. Um, most of my days don't look like that though. I'm always rushing off to do something. Okay. Don't fall. Don't stay. Okay, I'm just going to move this over here. All right, I do have some exciting news on the sweater that I've been working on. And I don't know, I did just a tiny amount of work on this morning, just a couple of rows, just enough to finish the decrease. Let's see, the decreases to shape the armholes. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is the back piece of the sweater I'm working on. And this is the part I was working on this morning. So the shaping for the armhole is done. Now from this point on, for I think it's 9.5 inches, I'm going to continue in the pattern and then do a little bit of shaping for the neck. And then this piece will be cast off and set aside while I work on the next part of the pattern. So that was really exciting. That was the goal of mine for a while to get to this point. Sweaters take a really long time. And so I've really not made a lot of progress on this. But I do like how it's working up so far. I have a long way to go because this is still the first section of the pattern that I'm working on. Don't know that I'll get any worked on today, but who knows? We'll see. But it feels good to have at least this much done. So far, this has taken, I'm only on my second skein of the yarn I'm using. And this is what I'm using, Lion Brand Wool Ease. So far, I've only used 2 of these, and I've gotten this far, which I think is really pretty good. And I think part of that is, even though it's a larger size, it's a size medium, and it's a heavier weight yarn. This is a worsted weight yarn. I think because I'm not doing cables, that has helped, because with cables, you just tend to eat a lot of yarn very quickly. And this just isn't. So I'm glad. I really like the texture. I think with the decreases, I'm a little uncertain whether I did them correctly. So I don't know if the pattern is going to be perfectly seamless, or if because of the decreasing of the shaping, or if I made an error. It might be just a little bit off from this point on. But I think even if it is, I don't think anyone's going to notice or care except for me. So I'm going to leave it alone and not fuss over it. But I'm very happy with how it's looking so far. Hopefully by the next video, I will have more of this done, and I will have a new update to share on it. So that's what I've got going on there. I'm keeping it all in this lovely vintage handmade bag. And speaking of vintage handmade things, by now, if you've been watching me for a while, you probably know I love looking at pattern books. And I get those from the library. I don't remember the last time I actually bought a pattern book. Occasionally, I will purchase individual patterns off of Ravelry, but not very often do I do that. most of my patterns are free off of Ravelry, or they come from the library in the form of a book. And so I picked this one up because I'm kind of, let's see, I'm on a bit of a kick right now looking at vintage patterns and deciding whether I want to start dabbling in those because I have so much free time to learn new things. But even if I don't do any of these patterns right away, it's fun just to look. So I picked up this book at the library. It's called Knitting Vintage Socks: New Twists on Classic Patterns, and I'm looking for the author's name, by Nancy Bush. Well-known author, designer, beautiful patterns, very knowledgeable. And these patterns are so cool. I've gone through, I actually really like this one. I didn't mark it as one I want to make, but I would like to. But her patterns are beautiful. And pretty well written from what I can tell. Let me get to one that I've marked. Let's see. I mean, there's a few in here I've marked as what I want to make. Let's see. I'm trying to find. I thought there was something in here specific I wanted to share, but I'm not finding it now. So I don't know where it's gone to. Here we go. This is one of the patterns I want to make. It's called a lichen ribbed sock. Very simple stocking, very beautifully done. But the layout of her patterns is really, I call it user friendly. She has some variations on the same pattern. I mean, it's a really lovely book. So I've enjoyed looking through that and planning for upcoming projects that I have really no business casting on, and I'm also out of needles to cast anything on. And I can only think of one solution for that, because I'm not going to just finish something before I cast on another one. So probably I should get some more needles and cast them on. That's what I think I should do. So new book, very exciting. I just picked that up recently, so I actually have it for, I think, about 4 weeks before I have to return it to the library. And what is going on with my watch? So I'm looking forward to that. There was one more thing I wanted to share, and I'm trying to find, here it is. While we're on the topic of vintage patterns, and you know what? The book I wanted to share is actually out in my car. I'm not going out there. Anyway, I'm just going to keep going. So I have been really interested for quite a while in knitting during wartime. And I think my interest in that started way back in elementary school when like everybody was, it seemed, into American Girl dolls and the American Girl books. I had a few of those series. I really wish I still had the books. They were so enjoyable to read. And then I always loved Molly, her character the best. And I always wanted a Molly doll. Someday I'm really hoping to get a Molly doll. They have a mini now. I don't know if you knew that. If you know anything about American Girl dolls, you probably already know this. I did not. But recently, just for kicks, I looked up the Molly American Girl doll, and I discovered you can get like a miniature version rather than the full size. And I'd be so happy with a mini Molly and then her set of books. But anyway, I mentioned that to my husband just in case he feels that he would like to do something special for Mother's Day coming up. If you happen to see this, Alexander, I would love a mini Molly and her books. Anyway, moving on. So my interest in, oh my gosh, that was such a rabbit trail. My interest in specifically wartime sock knitting started back then in elementary school, because in one of her books, Molly and her class was learning how to knit socks for the war effort. And she talks all about this and how it was really hard to learn. And I don't want to give it away if you've never read the books, but it was so fascinating. And so for quite some time, I thought, well, what if I found some vintage sock knitting patterns that would have been knit during this era, and made some myself. So I spent a lot of time researching patterns and looking into what kind of needles and what kind of wool. Um, and it's absolutely fascinating, the things that I learned, because each branch of the military has specific colors that were required for their garments. And after a lot of time and effort, the standards for socks became kind of universal. I don't know if that's the right term, but um, they weren't all the same originally. And so they had poor fitting socks, and they had socks that weren't to the specifications that were needed. And having warm feet during the war was very important, because our soldiers needed to be able to walk, they needed to be able to stay warm, and they needed to be able to protect their feet. And so eventually patterns were standardized. And anyway, it's this whole thing. Look it up if you're interested in knowing more, because I thought it was fascinating. All of that to say, I found a pattern, and the patterns I found were very similar as far as what kind of wool, specifically wool, and what kind of needles and what measurements, etc. This particular pattern that I'm going to be following is from the American National Red Cross in Washington, D.C. And I don't know if you can really see that very well. It's printed down here. This is just for a man's sock. I found this online somewhere. I think what I did was just simply do a Google search for like knitting in World War II or sock knitting in World War II or something of that nature. Anyway, you can find similar patterns to this. But I figured out what size needles I would need, what kind of sock yarn I would need. So I'm waiting for the yarn to come in. I already have the needles. Something I learned that I thought was really interesting was that for the needle sizes, depending on where you lived, depended on what size needles you used. So, and I don't know, I think everything I need is out in the car. I found this really cool chart. So, for example, US sizes are a little bit different than sizes used in the UK and in Canada. And so, and they're not always listed in the patterns. And so, when everything became standardized, that changed a little bit, but I had to do a little bit of research to figure out, okay, what size needle do I need now? Because the sizing is a little bit different. So I wrote that down. I made a note of what size needle. I found a yarn that matches the gauge very closely to this. It might be a little bit different, but it's close enough. And I found the color that I would need in order to knit a pair of stockings for somebody in the Navy. So I'm doing navy blue stockings because my grandfather was in the Navy. And way back when Alex and I were in high school and trying to figure out what to do with our lives, he considered joining the Navy, which got me to thinking, which is always a dangerous thing. What if I knit these socks from the perspective of somebody who is facing the very real possibility of someone she loves going off to fight. Um, and so it'll be kind of an interesting experience, I think. Now, of course, right now we have no fear of the draft coming back. There is no worry that my husband is going to have to go fight a foreign war somewhere. But it's kind of an interesting thing to think about, putting myself in the shoes of a woman back in the 1940s where that was very much a reality. And making a sock for somebody or a pair of socks for somebody that you're not even sure is going to make it home. And what must that have felt like? What must have been going on during those years? Anyway, so I have not yet gotten the yarn. But when it comes in, I will share that with you, and I'll talk a little bit more about the pattern probably, and what needles I'm going to use, etc. And we'll go from there. Until next time, happy knitting, happy Monday, and God bless you. Enjoy your coffee, and I'll see you next time.